Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. Today, we're going to talk about delivering the power of artificial intelligence. That sounds really easy, doesn't it? But what does that really mean? And more importantly, how are we going to achieve that? So today, I am going to tell you some of the things that are not very innovative, nothing that you haven't already heard before. So my goal isn't to come here and just blow your mind about something that's so insightful that you're going to have to rush back and do it immediately, right? My goal today is to connect the dots, because all of you have heard this before. But the key thing is, what does it really mean? Are you really living into that so that you can actually achieve and build innovative products, okay? So to start off with, it's like the challenge. And the reasons why I say the challenge is because every single company out there have some kind of business transformation strategy. And the reasons why I use that is because you can go ahead and Google it. Every single company that wants to succeed, to beat that competitive market, needs to have some sort of business transformation strategy in order to do that. And for all of you who are data scientists, or business analysts, or technologists, or whatever the case may be, one of the key, most important factors is, what problem are you trying to solve? I know what you just heard, but it is true, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what my professor told me back then, was that you're not here to build a toy. You're here to build a business. So if you're not solving the right problem, you're going to build something that nobody wants to use because there's no value added to it. So the key thing is understanding your challenge and what problem you're trying to solve. And then we're going to talk about AI. You've all heard it before. Why AI? Why now? And the key thing is unstructured data. What has changed? And then we're going to talk about setting up the foundation. Now you've heard about it, the challenge to AI. How do we get there? And last but not least, how do you productionize what you've just built, the insight that you have? So I'm trying to connect the dot for you today. So let's start off with the challenge, the ever-changing business landscape. Right? Just when you thought that you have things figured out, you did all your marketing, your research, you know your customers, you know your business models, and then all of a sudden you hear in the news some startup company that came up and everything just went to hell, right? You start all over again, the ever-changing business landscape. So it's all about business transformation and exceeding customer expectation. I'm an overachiever, so I'm going to use the word exceeding and not meeting customers' expectation. So 70% of the customers want a connected experience. What that means is that if you go in and you have, like I say, in a banking system with Chase Bank or Bank of America or whatever the case might be, you're now more connected than you ever before. You can chat with them live, you can call them a telephone, you can get on your computer, you can get on your laptop, you can get on your devices, or whatever the case might be. But you don't want to enter and give them the same information over and over and over again for each and every single one of them. You want it to all be connected to each other. That is important. Personalization. 84% of you wanted to be treated like an individual and not a number. When you're dating, I want you to date me, only me, right? Not somebody else. I'm not just like any other gal. Same thing with technology, same thing with the business. You want them to know who you are and what you value. Data protection. You heard about in the news all the time. You're really concerned. You really need to take care. Not only do you care about the data, you also want to know that whatever business that you're in, it's also going to be well protected. What are you doing with my data? How do I know that what I'm giving to you, the information about myself, so that you know who I am and personalize it and give me that connected experience, but also protect it at the same time? That is very key. Now, the three things that I've talked about, if you think about it, is actually the minimum requirement that you need for the enterprise business to succeed. It's not a luxury. These are requirements. But if everybody meets the requirement, then how are you going to become that competitive market, right? How are you going to succeed and beat everybody else? And that's what you call innovation. And the reasons for innovation is that you hear about it all the time, right? Remember the first time when iTunes came out? Oh my God, that is mind-blowing. Everybody have to have one. I remember there was times like, there is no way in hell am I going to be standing in line the night before to buy a cell phone, right? Then all of a sudden, Apple comes out and everybody is standing in line trying to buy a cell phone because it's innovative, it's value-driven. Now that you know what exceeding expectation means and what we have to do about it, what are you going to do about it? What's my team going to do about it? I have a team of data scientists and engineers. What we're going to do about it for connected experience is that we're going to focus on integration. Think about it. In order for you to be able to connect through all the different devices and channels, and the data scientists, you guys love data. The more, the better, right? And not just current data, but old data, historical data. But what happens if they're all in different systems? Then you have to pull it all in, and there's all that painful ways of, and there's a lot of solutions out there to how to consolidate all the data, process it, and translate it, and all of that, ingest the data. But if you can go in and solve the problem of integrating all that information together, that would be a huge step. So, personalization. How do we get to know you? If you think about it now, social media out there between Twitter, Facebook, emails, all that, voice, over the telephone, all of that are all information that are untapped. And that gives you a lot of information about you and who you are. Just got married, so all the news and announcement that came out. I'm about to have a child. All that information is about just by trying to, I remember the time when I was logging to Amazon account, and I was looking up, I was going to go to actually a birthday party that was actually one of those costume birthday party. So I was going to dress as Selene at the Underworld Vampire Slayer. So I went to Amazon, I was looking up the costume, and I was looking up for anything like the type of gun she was using, the knife and the dagger and all that stuff. And next thing I know, 4 months later, they're still trying to sell me nunchucks and ninja stuff and all that. And you would think that I'm about to go out and become an assassin or something, right? And that's all about personalization and using deep learning and unstructured data. Then there's the data models and governance. So it's all about data protection. But how do you know that you are protecting the data and you're doing it well? How do you know that what you're doing is actually working? That is when you need to go in and you have to have your KPIs, your metrics, and your governance to make sure that you are meeting those expectations, that we have those safeguards in place, and that we are protecting our customers. Innovation, building innovative products, leveraging leading edge technologies, and trying to discover new opportunities and capabilities. And the reasons why I'm saying this is that being innovative is actually not as easy as it sounds, right? Because in some ways, when you're talking about new opportunities, just because you thought about a new product, a new way of doing it, trying to convince your customers and trying to get them to break outside of their paradigm is extremely hard. Because in the past, they have never thought that, hey, you know what? Now I can actually figure out what people are thinking. Why do people behave certain way when their temperature goes down? Or why do I go out and want to buy a certain product and things like that? In the past, that was never possible. And for some of the business folks, you have to change the way they think. You have to change the way they want to do business. So when it comes to artificial intelligence, the future is here. A lot of people think about like modern technology. The future is here, but why now, right? If you think about it, John McCarthy first coined the phrase back in 1955. And in 1956, he went and created a group that does artificial intelligence. So it's been out there for a while. You've heard about it all through your life, but you always think about it as science fiction. But why now? And the reasons for that is because if you think about it, it started with big data. Because data scientists, artificial intelligence requires a lot of data so that you can train it and build it and test it, requires copious amount of data. And that was hard and difficult before in the past, but now with big data, you have the ability to gather all that information. That is now possible. And you can tell, and those numbers, by the way, are the compound annual growth right? So that you know the type of investments that are in there. IoT. So not only do you have a lot of data, but it's coming from many different sources and many different types of data, whether it's voice or text or image or videos and so on and so forth. Those are all important, and now that's becoming possible. And then you have GPU. What's good is there if there's data and then there's devices when you don't have the processing power to do it at speed. One of you are going to know what I'm talking about, because I think like probably over 15, 20 years ago, we're trying to do streaming video. And they were so far ahead in advance of their time right now, video compressions and things like that. Unfortunately, there wasn't the processing power that can deliver it fast enough, and that didn't work out well. So processing power is extremely important with GPU because of all that deep learning, training and everything requires processing power. So when you add that all together, what you have is a perfect catalyst for AI innovation, okay? And that's why we're here. Now, what's so special about AI and deep learning in general? One of the key things about deep learning and AI is that you can now go in and start processing all of the unstructured data. And for those of you who haven't heard about unstructured data, think of things that are photos, social media, emails with all those written free-form text, voice message, drones, so on and so forth. I'm not going to go in and name all of them. You can read it yourself. You've heard about it in the news, especially all of you who work in the field know all about this, unstructured data. But the reasons why it's key is because only 20% is structured, whereas 80% are unstructured. What that means is there are a huge amount of opportunities out there. If you think that everybody have thought about everything, no, you haven't. I mean, there are amazing things that are being built out there right now. I mean, like just yesterday, I was reading an article about how somebody was who was paralyzed, and he was wearing an exoskeleton outfit where just his thought will be able to control. He can now walk with just his thinking because they were building and embedded sensors into him. Well, for me, I'm not going to be the first one who's going to be volunteers because I don't like to have anything embedded in myself, but it's the first step toward those many amazing innovation out there, okay? So when we talk about innovation, with unstructured data and AI and everything, if you think about it, but how do we get about creating that? How do we go about building that? So the good news is this. Here are the 4 guiding principles. The good news is everything that you learned so far has not changed, okay? About the first pillars that we want to talk about is the building of the product itself, leveraging new technologies, applying the most effective techniques, and customer services. Those are the 4 guiding principles that we have. And the vision that my team wanted to have when we're trying to be innovative and trying to help our company build those innovative products and put it out to market was mainly to give fast access to those analytic insight now. So the key thing is, how do I get my data scientists, my business partners, all the other technologists, get to the data insight as fast and quickly as possible? And those 4 pillars are true of every single technologist that you've ever that worked in it, and even the data scientists yourself are those 4 principles. Usually I start from left to right, but today I'm going to start off first with applying the most effective techniques. And the reasons why I'm going to start off there is because going back, you have about the ever-changing business. The technology is constantly changing all the time. New things are popping up. One minute you're installing this greatest technology invented tools ever, and then the next week you've discovered that somebody else invented something new, and now you have to rip everything else out you have, right? And then of course customers like, you know what, today I wanted this, tomorrow I wanted that, very capricious and everything. So how do you deal with that? How many of you have not heard about Agile before? See, all of you have heard about Agile, but believe it or not, it's really hard to implement. And the reasons why I say that is because even now, today, when we're talking about Agile is about discovering as you go along. Agile is about it's okay to fail, because when we talk about innovation, one of the key characteristics about innovation and being successful at innovation is that number one, what problem are you trying to solve? But number two is being open to risk, taking the risk and not being afraid to fail. And more importantly, learn from your failure so that you can succeed and do better next time. And the reasons why I say agile here is because we don't know how the business is going to change. We don't know how the technology is going to make the big difference. And we don't know if the customer actually like what we built. We don't have all the requirements, so we can't start until we have all the requirements. How many times have you heard that before? Even now in Agile, well, we didn't have all the requirements. You know, I'm going to skip down to the bottom. Perfection is the enemy of progress, Churchill, because it's so true. You kind of get paralyzed by through too much analysis and building the right solution instead of the best solution. The reasons why that's important with Agile is that it's okay to fail is because go in and start out with what you know. One of the things that we did when we first started out with deep learning using images is that within our own company is that we tried to build a pipeline. We're not quite sure. We know what we want to build, but we don't have all the requirements. So the first thing we did was actually just build a simple pipeline. Let's take the image and take it through our infrastructure right now and build it along just to see what it would do and roll it all the way into production. We're not going to have any business decision made out of it and everything. And the reasons for that, the first proof of concept, and therefore Agile, is that as we're going along, we discovered things along the way, and we marked them down. And so the next iteration of Agile, we improved upon it until we finally get a viable product. And the nice thing about it is that as you're going along, you discover things that are no longer true. What you thought that was true is no longer true. And not only that, but you also be able to go in and demonstrate to your customers, like, is this what you want? You know what? I thought this is what I want, but no, hell no. Let's go in a different direction, right? So things like that, and that's okay to fail, because that's what it's all about before you go too deep. And DevOps, microservices, those are two very key important parts right there, because people forget that sometimes you need to go from end to end. And being able to streamline that process, and microservices, we don't want to go in and build a monolith solution, especially if business is going to change, technology is going to change, and customer change. You want to build microservices so that you can rip out what doesn't work and replace it, right? I mean, right now, I'm building, my team is actually building our own custom solutions and product, but we built it in a way that if any one of our vended solution or competitors is going to overtake what we've built in-house, because we're really not a software company, we're an insurance company here at Allstate. So what that means is that I'll be able to replace what's underneath the hood with a different engine, and it won't impact the rest of the business and systems. That's one of our key models that we're trying to do. So microservices is extremely important, and so is Agile. Okay? So I spent a lot of time on that. So now I'm going to go back to building analytic products. The reasons why we say we specialize in core application products is because when you think about the enterprise level, we want to say use the word specialize. It's because we don't want to reinvent the wheel. If it already exists out there, do not be a hero. Do not try to go in and reinvent that wheel that we're talking about. Leverage what's out there. Leverage what is already, somebody's already figured it out, but then build on top of it, right? And when you build on top of it, figure out what the gap, that problem that you're trying to solve, make it scalable and repeatable. Because at an enterprise level, it's always, in a startup company, I have this great idea, I make the best cookies in the world, right? And everybody said I should sell it. And so I went and started off in my own kitchen, and I have some friends to build it over. But the problem is that a lot of startup company, it's not really the funding is where a lot of company fails. It's actually on the scale. Because then how do you handle the vast volume that's coming in and the changes in the customers and the input? Scaling is extremely hard with startup companies just as much as with big companies at the enterprise level. Okay? And making sure that it is flexible, robust, maintainable, and sustainable. The last piece, sustainable and maintainable. Just because you make it scale and you got a great solution, but it's not easy to maintain. Think of all those poor IT support guys. Please be kind to them. When you built an architect and built it, make sure that they can maintain it, okay, and sustainable. A lot of times it's like, sure, we can maintain and sustainable, and we build, and then all of a sudden we just, fall out because we can't keep up, we can't keep up with the speed. So you need to make sure that when you architect design something that is scalable, maintainable, and sustainable. Those are some key words that we all need to use as a guiding principle. Leveraging leading edge technology, same as before. There's a lot of, especially for Fortune 500 companies, you are probably not surprised that there must be like hundreds, if not thousands, of products out there. And some of them are duplicate of each other and so on and so forth, right? So when you go in and build out your solution, please keep in mind that do not, while the latest technology is always sexy and everything, and you always want to use the greatest buzzword, and it looks great for your resume, and you want to be part of the in crowd, but at the end of the day, what you want to do is building the right solution. If it already exists in the company, then use that. Unless that new technology is going to bring something different, it's going to make a difference, use what already exists, because you need that money, that funding, that energy, that effort, that resource, that skills that's so important, that's cost so much money to go after the feature that doesn't exist. That's why I love to keep it simple, stupid, right? Let's not, again, reinvent the wheel. But when you do pick the technology, you want to make sure that it is definitely interoperable and great integration. And the reasons why I say that is, how many times have you brought in a technology and it turns out that it doesn't easily integrate with your existing systems? And so many times it involved like ripping out all these old technology, and it ended up costing more money and more hard work than you realize. And that's the reasons why you ended up with 5, 6, 7 hundreds of duplicate systems that doing duplicate things. So you want to make sure that it integrates well with both internal system and all of your external vendor partners and products that you have out there that your company is using and leveraging. And more importantly, being agnostic and portable. That is extremely important, because a lot of times, it's like with the ever-changing business and technology, if you pick something that's proprietary, that means that when divorce comes along and you have to get out, you're now hooked. So you want to be able to go in and make sure that you can be able to have an exit plan, okay? So making sure that it's agnostic and portable is very important, but if you have to pick something that's proprietary, make sure you have an exit plan. Last but not least, customer-driven. And for those of you who works with external customer, that is always important. But for those of you who are building the solution, think of your internal customers too. And my internal customer happen to be data scientists. What is it that's important for them? And if it's your external customer, what is important for your external customers? And as you're doing your agile approach and you're trying to prioritize and figure out which features or what feature you should go into, your customer are the ones who's going to determine that prioritization. That is very key and important. So it's customer driven. So now that you've heard about our principles and what we're trying to do, you've heard about a lot of solutions out there. There are a lot with regards to data ingestions. There's a lot of tools out there that helps you how to build and train your models. But the key thing, as you've heard from the last speaker, is that how do you deploy? That now that you've built this wonderful models, that you spent all that time training and building and everything, how do you actually get onto production at scale? Things are going really fast. I heard that next year, I'm going to be having more than 100 models throwing at me. And by the way, that 100 models, the one model that we rolled out this year, there's 11 iterations of it. So it doesn't just stop. Just because you roll it out doesn't mean you're done. Because the whole idea of Agile, the whole idea of like data scientists and throwing it out there is that you always want to improve. You're always trying to optimize, because if you don't, it'll go stale and it'll go bad. And not only that, lucky if it crashes your system. You wonder, it's like, how's that lucky? Well, that's because you know right away that something's bad and you need to fix it. Very unlucky if it's very subtle and you didn't even know about it. And it'll be days, months, years, and you discover all this time you've been making really bad decisions. So it's very important that you have to be able to model deployment. It's important for our scale. We need to be able to monitor it once you go out into production, that is it still meeting expectation, and trying to detect those subtle differences. Logging is very important. I know it doesn't sound sexy, but you need to be able to log all this transactional data and all those other information insights. Why? Because you need to have that continuous improvement that's going on, right? The optimizations that I've just talked about. And of course, test and learn. There's 101 ways to skin a cat, which is the best and most efficient way. Test and learn, let's figure it out. And especially if you can do it and figure it out sooner and fail faster and redirect your effort to some other models, the better. Okay? So that's the reasons why those 4 things are extremely important. So with that, thank you very much.
Question or two?
Sure.
All right. Time for questions, people? Any questions?
What would be one example from your experience where you had to take the feedback from a deployed model and then use it to bring about substantial improvement in the next iteration from your real-world experience?
One of the examples we have, actually I can think of multiple examples. It's like, for an example, the imaging that I was talking about. We roll out the image just to go and test through the pipeline. And then we looked at like how well were we able to recognize if a car is a total loss or not. And there's a lot of factors that built into it. And so we roll out to production. We tested against several different like real live images that are being sent in, and we continuously optimize it. Or a call center, when a call comes in, it's like how well is our voice to text is detecting all the information, and what are all of the factors, right, that goes into like how do we reroute the call and where are we going to and how many questions does it take to, or what are all of the different parameters that we have in order to reroute to the correct agent, for an example. And the reasons why I say that is because if you think about deep learning is not like predictive modeling where there's just only a few hundred parameters. We're talking about thousands of parameters. That means that no matter how well you optimize it day to day, there's always room for improvement because there are thousands of parameters out there and variations, and you can always improve it. And the proof is in the pudding in terms of like rolling it out and seeing what happens, right? And then you try to reiterate as you go along. I believe that later on after lunch today, there's going to be a couple of my colleagues going to go into case studies. So that would be something to look forward to. Any other question? Yes?
Your organization is in Allstate. Take your time and continue.
Yes.
I understand AI is a big umbrella. It could be a lot of stuff. And I also understand a lot of the stuff under the umbrella is already embedded in different departments, like claim or churn prediction. And they use totally different techniques. And for claim, for video, you might use deep learning, but for maybe churn, you use prediction, regression, or whatever.
Yeah.
So your organization looks like a separate organization. And what's your relationship with the other departments? I mean, are you building model for them to use, or?
Yep. So what my team does is that our data scientists will build the models. What I do is I try to make their life as easy as possible. I feel like that BAF's commercial where it's like, we're not, we didn't build the engine, we make the engine faster, type of situation. So what happened is that what we do is that we build customized software product solutions within our company that will help deploy all these models across the board, right? So that is our unique contribution to the company. What it is that you have, if you think about, there's decision modeling, which are based upon known facts and information that hardly ever change. Then there's the predictive modeling that, the decision, all those random forests and things like that. And then, of course, there's the deep learning. So there's different types of models that are out there. And what we do is that we look at those repeatable patterns And we built an application product that would deploy it out into production. So instead of it taking 6 months, it'll only take a day or two to do. And then especially if you wanted to go through reiteration, that takes even faster. And that also includes all the monitoring and the logging and things like that. Okay. Does that help answer your question? Okay. Right. And that is actually very important, right? Because if you think about at the enterprise level, you need to be able to build to scale. You don't want every single one of this department building their own solution, have different types of quality. The last slide that I have right here is kind of address what you're talking about, because when you go in, you streamline these solutions, and you build a platform that take away all those work from the data scientists so they don't have to do it. They don't have to become the engineer. They don't have to go in and test it just to get it out in production. They don't have to worry about security and all of that because we handle it within our own product. And we also add in all the governance and the KPIs and everything. So that is a win-win for the business, the data scientists, and the technology when you go in and you try to streamline those solutions. I know I kind of skip all of that because I figured you can all read, especially afterwards. Any questions? Other questions?
Actually, I think we got a thing moving.